You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Limitless Leadership Podcast. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and be sure to leave a review. The more reviews you can leave, the more reviews this podcast obviously gets and is able to reach people and build leaders. And that is what we're on a mission to do, is to reach people and build leaders. And speaking of leaders, I'm joined today by another fantastic leader in the automotive repair industry. Our guest today is and if you're watching, he's stroking his magnificent beard. The guy has a great name. He's got a great beard. He's a great guest. Our guest today is the host of the Wrench Turners podcast. He's a custom content creator. He's a consultant. He is a self-described data nerd and the host of the VP of fixed operations at Lion Partnership. Our guest today is Joshua Taylor. Joshua, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Josh. It's going to be a little bit interesting for those listening because when we use each other's names, you're definitely going to have to listen for the Joshua. Yep. Now you can hear the difference in our voices, but I appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, I'm glad you're here, man. Excited to hear what you do and how you do it. I already know what you do and how you do it. I know you're great at what you do and how you do it, but I love for the audience to hear what your own mission is, which is incredibly valuable. And I'm excited for you to share that with the audience. But before you do, share with us who you are, all the things we need to know about Mr. Joshua Taylor.
So I am, for those who don't know, a Canadian. Don't hold that against me. I've been in the automotive industry around for a very long time, over 20 years, getting close to 25. I got my ticket as a Canadian here in Canada. I got my CFQ back in 2007. So I've been working in or around or with dealerships since about 2001. So some of you folks may not have even been born yet when I first started. So I'm a licensed mechanic. I've been on the desk as a service advisor, behind the big desk as a fixed ops director, as well as a GM of a collision center. I've worked with digital marketers and still do. I create custom content along with the podcast itself, Wrench Turners podcast. We've got 160 or so episodes and adding to them fairly quickly. We've got stuff queued up all the way through July so far. I'm not sure when this is airing, but keep on a lookout for all the great guests that we have on the show as well. And like Josh does here with the Limitless Leadership podcast, we really focused on technicians, and that's really my purpose. A couple of years ago, I got humbled after my grandfather died that I wasn't serving my community. The thing that made my grandfathers the most important men in my lives at the time successful, I thought, was serving your community. So after 20 years or so in the automotive industry, I need to be giving back. And that's what spawned the Wrench Turners podcast to a degree. But the really pivotal moment was when I read an article trying to figure out, what am I going to do to serve my community? Was reading an article by the CDC published in 2016 that mechanics in America, I realize I'm Canadian, but mechanics in America are the third highest profession that commit suicide. So that one tidbit defined so many things that have happened in the last 3 or so years. I myself are in the ideation and attempt category. And within my first 18 months of being an apprentice, one of my very good friends and apprentices with me committed suicide. So that's transformed into a purpose, helping technicians live happier, healthier, more productive lives. So everything that I do is based in that purpose. My day, my evening, the podcast, everything that I do. And hopefully in the next 30 or so minutes, you can take a tidbit away that I've learned over the last 3 years, specifically focused on it, or the last almost 25 years of career that you can take away and be happier, healthier, more productive tomorrow too.
Joshua, first, I want to say thank you. From me to you, man, thank you for what you do, how you do it, why you do it. It's such a necessary thing that you're doing. The fact that you are available, approachable, you have the resources, and And the thing about resources, there's a lot of resources out there, but you're another resource. And now we have more opportunities to be resourceful. And so thank you for everything you're doing. Since the pandemic, I saw a stat a couple years ago where anxiety and depression has increased by 300%. And in this industry alone, if you're listening and you're a part of the industry, this can be a bit of a jaded industry. It's a grind. It's not easy. I would say, depending on who you are, you might debate whether or not it's even worth it. But what we do know is that there is a method to the madness. There is a incredible results that come from the day-to-day consistent grind that you're doing, and you're making significant impact in the seat that you're in. And we can't let the size of our current seat dictate the significance of our impact. For those who are listening who might have questions as to, Joshua, how am I able to shift my own perspective, my own mindset to where I'm staying above the line, for lack of better terms? What kind of advice would you give to someone who is struggling to get back above the line in their day-to-day life?
Two most important things, I think, not just in mechanic's life, but any man's life, is self-accountability and self-reflection. One of the things that have come to light over the last 3 years of spending time, energy, and effort researching, coaching, talking to technicians at scale is that the biggest challenge that we face, both at large and personally, is accountability. That is the single hardest nut to crack for every single one of us. Because the challenge is, most of us underestimate the amount of effort required to be successful. And the underestimation is usually significant. It's not a little bit. It's like 10%, 20% lower. It's like 100%, 200% lower than what we actually need to put in to be successful. I use the terminology and statistics for myself, something that I've curated over time, that it takes 6 times doing exactly the same job. When you're talking about literal technical skills, flat rate, it takes 6 times doing the exact same job to hit that flat rate time within 10%. How do you know that? Because I used to track it. I held myself accountable to those things. If you're not holding yourself accountable with actual writing or data, you're not actually holding yourself accountable. When it comes to professional, personal, communication, emotion, all of those things, if you're not tracking it, if you're not writing it down, if you're not holding yourself accountable, you're not actually going to be able to get better. So in terms of how do I get myself out of the hole, so to speak, right now, look at yourself in the mirror. Genuinely ask yourself, am I doing everything I can to improve? 9 times out of 10 in coaching, the answer was no.
Yeah.
They absolutely were not.
It's a tough pill to swallow too, because a lot of us do recognize, you know what, I'm actually not doing every single thing I can to get better each and every day. But again, I go back to the resources. We have them. Are we being resourceful? Are we putting in the time, effort, and energy? Are we truly looking at ourselves and asking ourselves in the mirror, what can I be doing differently to live a more happier, healthier, and more productive life? I think that's phenomenal, man. I'll ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is considering a line of work like this, knowing that it is not necessarily a mentally easy place to thrive and succeed?
So I'll give you 5 things that you shouldn't do.
Okay.
That might be a little bit easier because there's a lot of things you could do, but 5 things you shouldn't do coming into this trade.
Yeah.
1, don't assume that it's easy. It's hard. It's super hard. There are days where you're bashing your face against a concrete wall trying to figure something out. And you have to bash your face as many times as you have to get through it, to learn, to grow, to get the experience. 2, people around you are going to suck. There's going to be a lot of people who suck. You're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to learn conflict resolution. You're going to have to learn how to communicate with people that you don't necessarily like. You may not respect them, but you're going to have to learn how to communicate with them. So don't assume that you don't have to learn that. 3, every day is a challenge. Every single day, there's going to be a challenge that you don't want to do. You're still going to have to do it. The cool thing is, once you get through those challenges, on the other side of that is a lot of money. Like Willie Carter said on one of my episodes, and Brooklyn Morse and Josh Arnold, do the hard things that nobody else wants to do. You get really good at those things. It means the easy stuff becomes like unconscious thought. You're going to make so much more money. It's ridiculous. So get through the challenges.
I like that you brought that up, Joshua, because, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I will say this. You mentioned every day is a challenge. However, there is a but, like there is a caveat. We go through things to subsequently grow through things, and we know that growth and comfort can't coexist. And so if you surround yourself with daily challenges, that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that's a great thing as long as we can shift our own perspective and our own mindset around why we're doing this. I want to challenge myself because I know that growth and comfort can't coexist. Therefore, I'm going to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And with that comes the benefits like you talked about, an increase in income, ultimately potentially a better quality of life, probably a better quality of life, because with more money that can bring a better quality of life. But it's not just about the money too. You're also making a significant impact, as we talked about earlier, in an industry that desperately needs it.
Awesome. And I'll give you two more. So number 4, big deal here, is if you think for an instant, let's say you've been in the shop for 90 days, 180 days, 3 to 6 months, and you're looking around you and people are complaining about the shop and people are complaining about leadership, and you're starting to complain about leadership. 9 times out of 10, problem's not with leadership. Problem's with you. Look at yourself in the mirror, hold yourself accountable. Like we said, not maybe 5 minutes ago, hold yourself accountable for what you can do to be better. Number 5, and this is the most important thing. The most important thing you need to learn as a mechanic is, as the phrase goes, you are some of the 5 people around you. If the 5 people around you are not pushing you to be better, pushing you to be positive, pushing you to communicate, pushing you to learn and grow, you're with the wrong people or you're in the wrong shop. Those 5 people will change your life. I'll give you an example myself. The 10 mil boys, if you guys have been watching the show, if you're not, please go check out the 10 mil panels. Those boys are my life now. 3 years ago, I started talking with them, recording with them, having a life with them. There isn't a day that goes by that we don't talk. The group of us don't talk. I don't know how I would function without them now. I don't know how I functioned before. Having that similarly minded, even remotely similarly minded in the trade set of men that I can talk to about anything, about life, about mechanics, about industry, about whatever, changes your life. Get those. So those would be my 5 pieces of advice that I'd give someone getting into the trade, of what perhaps not to do and then what to do.
That's fantastic. And all 5 of those things are easily digestible. They're very applicable, and we can take action on each and every one of them. To piggyback on the 5th thing that you just mentioned, I recently heard a podcast with Alex Hormozy, and he said something along the lines of, you want to surround yourself with people who are going to talk crap to your face, but speak the world about you to, essentially behind your back. And those are the people who should be in your tightest network, because they're going to speak truth to you. And we need to hear that truth. We all have blind spots. And if you're listening to this episode saying, I don't have a blind spot, that's a blind spot. So if you recognize, I got someone like Joshua in my corner who's going to tell me the hard things because he's doing me a disservice if he doesn't. Those are the kind of people who we need to surround ourselves with, people who we will allow to speak truth into our life, knowing that they have the best of intent for our lives. Joshua, sorry, man, you're right, man. Joshua, plus I'm already getting it messed up. My apologies. Joshua Taylor, question for you, my friend. This is a leadership podcast. You've already alluded to a lot of leadership principles, specifically with mechanics, but in general, this is a leadership podcast. I'll just straight up ask you a blanket question. What does leadership mean to you?
Shut up and listen.
Clear, concise, direct. Shut up and listen. Tell me more.
So over my career, I've been humbled several times, fired or screwed up or whatever. Life outside of work humbling me. Overwhelmingly, most of the time, I don't need to say both, but overwhelmingly, it's because I'm talking too much, thinking too much, and not listening. I don't even know how to pronounce it anymore because it's modified a little bit at AUDHD. So a little bit of autistic, a little bit of ADHD. So I genuinely have a difficulty in social scenarios. I have difficulty understanding body language, facial expressions. It's been a real challenge for me over my career. And on several occasions, I've let that get the best of me and not done well with the teams I'm leading or teams I'm working with. So when you take a moment to reflect after being humbled, like I have, and you realize that you need to shut up and listen, it becomes a way of life every single day. Like right now, I'm looking at how much I'm talking versus how much Josh is talking.
You're also the guest. You're also the guest, though. This is your show today, Joshua.
I understand, but I'm still thinking about it because as much as I'm a guest on a show, and no matter how much you might be the person being asked questions in the shop, or you're the leader and you've got a team around you asking questions, being mindful how much you speak in relation to how much the team around you speaks volumes to your respect of the team. You want to garner attention. You want to garner respect. You want to garner that loyalty that high value teams do. You need to listen. You need to speak last. And most importantly, when your team speaks and you listen, when you speak last, you don't ignore everything they said. Make sure to make them feel heard.
Yes.
I heard Sally say this. I heard John and Joe and Jack say these things. I agree with this. I agree with this. I agree with this. Can we put together a solution that incorporates all those 4 pieces? Because I believe that your suggestions as a team are going to make us successful as a team.
What I'm hearing you say, you see what I did there? What I'm hearing you say, Joshua, is validate the feelings and thoughts and opinions and advice and suggestions of those around us. A lot of us, especially as leaders, we have to recognize the importance of listening and listening empathetically. And what we know about empathy is that empathizing with someone doesn't mean that we necessarily have to experience the same situation as that person, but it does mean that we can imagine their circumstances and accept their feelings without invalidating them. And the key word here is invalidating. If we're really listening, and we're listening not to reply, but listening to understand, we're able to validate the feelings around us. We're able to echo the sentiments that was just shared with us from the folks around us at that meeting, just like you pointed out. That makes someone feel heard. That makes someone feel valued. That makes someone more engaged. And we know that connection creates engagement, and engagement increases performance. So everything you just shared right now is to me, again, it's about the person. It's about the person before the process, the person before the profit. It's the connection before the content. And a lot of us are listening thinking, hey, I'm a shop owner, or I'm a service manager, or I'm a lead technician, or I'm whatever, fill in the blank. And I'm trying to get my team to buy in and to do these things. And I come in and I give them directive after directive after directive, but they're not listening. Are they not listening, or are you not listening? Are you not listening to what is being shared with you? Because one of the greatest attributes of a leader, to your point, is to shut up and listen. Many of us feel like we have to have the answers. We have to know everything. We have to come in and give directive after directive after directive. But that doesn't mean we're providing direction. And we can provide direction through asking questions and shutting up and listen for the answers to those questions. I want to stop here and also say this, because I learned on this episode from you, Joshua. You mentioned, I want to say the acronym, or what you said was AU-ADHD. A little bit of, and is that made up, or is that a real thing? AU-ADHD?
Ever since more information has come to light about ADD and ADHD, and that it's not necessarily deficiency, but it's hyperactive, there are different acronyms that have floating around, like DAVE, like dopamine attention variability, executive dysfunction. There are different categories of that. The fact that you are significantly more likely to have some autistic or spectrum-based symptoms if you are ADHD, and vice versa.
Okay.
Apparently, a very large pool of us who are in that ADHD pool also have TISM symptoms as well. So to that point, like I said earlier on, mental health is really important to me.
Yeah.
However, in my career, amongst many other things, if you use something as a crutch, it's no longer mental health. It's an excuse. So when someone in my shop or someone in my team or someone that surrounds me is saying, I'm really depressed today. It's like, no, you lack direction. Same thing goes with people who are seen as lazy, perhaps. We talked about this. I did a bunch of content about this. Again, I don't know how far back this is going to go, but I did a bunch of content about being lazy. They probably aren't lazy. They might be a little bit depressed. They might be a lot depressed, but it typically is because they lack purpose and direction. To your leadership statement just a moment ago, direction. The team doesn't necessarily need to know what to do. They can be given targets. These are the things that we're looking for. I've hired you as a teammate, as a director, as a manager, as a mechanic. I've hired you. I've delegated that job to you to outshine me. I can't do it as well as you can. I can't do this thing as well as you can. I want you to tell me what to do. That's why I've hired you.
Love that.
As leaders, we need to delegate ourselves out of a job.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was Steve Jobs who was quoted as saying something along the lines of, we don't hire people so we can tell them what to do. We hire them so they can tell us what to do. And to your point, Joshua, about direction, and if you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard me say on probably 90% of the episodes, we get to create two things so that we can provide two things. We get to create safety and trust so that we can provide clarity and direction. I want to go back and highlight something though, because you mentioned that you are maybe self-described AU ADHD, maybe actually diagnosed AU ADHD, but I want to say this. Props to you for stepping out into your calling and doing what you're doing, because many of us can easily have a perspective of, well, I can't do this because of this symptom or this ism or whatever, right? And you talked about how I can use it as a crutch. I can use it as an excuse. You can also use this as your superpower. You can also recognize my perspective drives the way that I do things, because the way that I view things drives the way that I do things. And we will always find evidence in the things that we believe. If I find out that I have AU ADHD and I'm thinking, well, that means I can't do X, Y, or Z. Immediately this means I can't do this, that, or the other thing. No. But if I choose to find evidence that I can't do it, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find what I believe, which is a limiting belief. I can also challenge that belief and question that belief and say, regardless, not even despite of, but in spite of, I'm going to achieve, I'm going to excel, I'm going to succeed. So props to you for doing this, man. Like, again, the fact that you are on a mission that you are, the fact that you are so mindful of how can I impact and affect in a positive way mechanics specifically in this industry, and you're so mindful of helping them create a happier, healthier, and more productive lifestyle. I love what you're doing. I want to highlight that, and I don't want to glaze over that. I love what you're doing, man. I'll ask you that kind of to piggyback on that whole spiel, if you will. We've all heard the term work-life balance. I'm of the opinion where it's more of a work-life rhythm and really more like a work-life harmony, because there's never really going to be a true even balance, but there can be harmony in work and life, and our mindset and mental health play a massive factor in that. Can you speak to what it's like to create for yourself a life of a healthy work-life balance, rhythm, and harmony?
I think you've nailed that. It's more of a rhythm than anything. I don't think there's a balance, quite honestly, because I think lives change so much depending on circumstances. Like, for example, at 19, you have little to no responsibility at all. You have to make sure you eat and get to work. That's pretty much your responsibilities, because most 19, especially right now with the economy, there's a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds that are still living at home.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But it means that you have very, very little responsibilities other than making sure that you eat and getting to work on time. That's about it. Once you get to work on time, you got to work hard, but that's it. When you're 35, the difference from the majority of men in this industry, the majority of mechanics in this industry, you have a family. You probably have 2 kids. You probably have a house. You probably have 2 cars. You probably have a dog. You probably have all of these responsibilities. Plus, you've got tool debt. Plus, you might have made mistakes and irresponsible decisions when you were 18 to 25 that you're still probably dealing with at 35. which means all of the pressures of society, all the pressures of the economy, all the pressures of your job, and pressures of being successful at home really tilt that scale to what do I need to do to be successful in all of the things that I'm doing? The challenge is it's really hard to be successful at everything if you're doing a lot. Really, really hard to be successful when you're doing too much. I'm kind of right there right now. I'm working too much. I wish I wasn't working as much as I was, but my purpose is calling. So I'm doing everything I possibly can to drive that purpose. Is the goal in the short term, medium term, and long term to pare down on the overall so I can spend more time with family, so I can have a better impact in better ways? Absolutely. I have action steps planned so that today I'm doing this, tomorrow I'm doing this, next month I'm doing this, to make that impact, to remove the obscured balance to one direction back to something that feels positive, that makes me feel happy and productive every day.
That's the key is action steps. You talked about how, yes, this is where I'm at right now. This is not where I'm going to be, my entire life or career, but I have action steps put in place to jump into the next season. And, as an entrepreneur, I can tell you, I understand what it's like I'm part-time fireman because I feel like I'm always putting out fires. There's constantly fires. There's all these fires around me. I got to do this. I got to do that. There's so many things to do. And what we have to realize is if I'm making every one of these fires a priority, nothing's really a priority. And so what am I doing to protect my own sanity, to protect my mental health, to time block, to use a calendar system, to compartmentalize, to set, and more importantly, keep boundaries so that I'm putting out the necessary fires on the necessary days. And it takes a lot, but we can do it. It's achievable with action steps. We have to put something in place in order to achieve the end in mind. In the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, one of the 7 habits is to begin with the end in mind. But the key word here is to begin, which means that we shift our focus from the end in mind onto the steps that we're taking, the action steps that you talked about, in order to get from here to there. Joshua, a couple questions for you remaining. Number one is, what's the best advice you've ever received from a mentor or a coach?
So I would consider my grandfathers, mentors, teachers, all of the things. They taught me an unbelievable amount by the time I was 16. Namesake Taylor, my grandpa Taylor, passed down through generation that nothing cannot be solved by hard work. It doesn't matter what you are doing. It doesn't matter what challenge you are in. It doesn't matter what strife, anxiety, depression. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the challenge. Everything can be solved by hard work. So much so that family mantras on my body, because everything is solved by hard work. And the naysayers go, well, you got to work smart, not work hard. It's like, guess what you got to do in order to work smart? You got to do a lot of hard work to figure out what the smart thing to do is. So everything is solved by hard work. And if you're not solving the problem and you think you're working hard, either you're not working hard enough or you're not doing the right thing hard enough. So this is the thing. This is the measurement. When you make notes, when you write in journals, when you document what you're doing and report on what you're doing for yourself and hold yourself accountable, you realize I've done the same thing 50 times and it's not getting better. I'm working really hard through these same 50 things and it's not getting any better. Well, are you doing the right thing?
Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Can you show us your ink? So if you're listening to this episode, I'd encourage you to watch this episode. Go to the YouTube channel at The Bearded Leader, and you will see, what does it say? Work hard and persistence. Yeah, love that. Focus. Love that. Is that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle font? Okay.
It is on the left. So I've got Dragon Ball. I've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've got Bleach. I've got Desire is going to be on the left arm.
Okay.
And it's going to be in the same old school Gothic font as Van Helsing. Okay. And Faith is going to go on my back in Celtic.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, very cool. So last question for you, Joshua. I want everyone to be able to find your podcast, the Wrench Turners podcast. I also want everyone to connect with you if they have any questions. You can also reach Joshua through me. If you reach out to me, josh@thebeardedleader.com. I see you're on LinkedIn a lot. Like you're very active on LinkedIn. Of course, LinkedIn is one area to find you, but how else can our audience get in touch with you?
So the easiest thing to understand what the podcast is wrenchturnerspodcast.com. And that'll give you an understanding of what the podcast look like. You can find us on YouTube. Wrench Turners Podcast is on YouTube. You can find the Wrench Turners Podcast on Spotify as well. Everything is on Spotify, back to the very first episode, which I believe started out was when I was the very first time I spoke in a room full of my peers. You can listen to Tito's and T-shirts 2022. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Mr. J. Taylor on LinkedIn. I post occasionally on Instagram, and I haven't posted there in a while, but there's a fairly big following on TikTok as well.
Awesome. Very good. Well, Joshua Taylor, man, once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for doing what you're doing in the industry as well.
You're most welcome, and thank you all for listening, for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the button down below. Make sure you subscribe to Limitless Leadership Podcast. Make sure you hit the like button on the Limitless Leadership Podcast. If it didn't flash below, you need to report YouTube for not doing it supposed to, because every time you say it, it flashes below. Make sure you hit that button.
I paid Joshua to say all of those things. Thank you, my friend. All right. And thank you for tuning in once again. Every episode, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. So thank you again for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading